All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 141 of the Fantasy Timeline, a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network. I'm Josh at Real Fantasy TL. I'm with my co-host with the most, Drew at DR_PRA. Drew, how you doing, man?
I'm good. It's so good to be here, talking some football again. And like you mentioned just before, we're getting close to seeing some live action. And then just a few days away from seeing Hard Knocks back, which for me is that signals football is back.
Let's go. Motor City, Dan Campbell. Someone put out a clip today, and I was like, I just need to watch this before like anything that I do. Like, go to work, watch that. Start the pod, watch that. We'll probably get in trouble with HBO or something, but that should be the clip that just starts every episode of this before we even do our spiel. Just Dan Campbell pumping us all up and getting the party started. But like Drew said, it is football eve. Like, this is it. Like, there is not going to be another week without football until February. That's just so good to say. It warms my heart. I love the off season, or as our leader, Dynasty Outhouse, will say, the non-point scoring season, because we're never off if we're doing this the right way. But I love it when those games get played too. And before we get started, before we do what we do, we got a very special guest. We got Mark Shue at Primetime Mock. Mark, how you doing?
Josh, Drew, it's great to be here. Just listening to you talk wax poetic about the season coming up, it gets me so excited. Like I said, I've already got a couple of my DFS lineups set up for the Hall of Fame game tomorrow night, and I'm ready.
Yes,
I
sir.
am ready for this season to really just to start heating up. We probably shouldn't watch this game, but we can't help it.
We're gonna watch, whether it's a quarter or a series. We're degenerates. We just want to see guys in pads, NFL players doing their thing, and it's gonna be a good time. I'm not gonna lie, it's gonna be a good time. Whether I watch it for a minute or I watch all four quarters, it's not gonna matter. It's gonna make me happy that football is back. But Mark, before we get into everything, just let everybody know who you are, where they can find you, and what you're up to.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Primetime Mock. I do a summer industry mock draft show where I put together everybody from the fantasy community, and we do different style mock drafts every week. Sometimes we'll do position only drafts, or we'll do a top 60 draft, or sleeper and flex drafts. And really, we sort of focus on talking strategy in a roundtable form. To talk about certain aspects of drafting strategy based on whatever the focus of that draft is. You've been so great to come on the past couple of years. I thank you for that. We're always looking for new people to come on. Drew, I've got to have you on sometime here soon. And then as I turn into the season, I'm putting together this reality competition, Fantasy Football. It's a DFS and season-long fantasy guillotine-style league. The quick way that it's set up is basically Thursday night. We have a immunity showdown where we play a DFS lineup. The winner is safe for the week. You play Thursday to Sunday night. Monday night players are ineligible on your season long team, and then the lowest score after Sunday night, you go into a Monday night eliminator DFS showdown, and the loser of that goes home. And we cut players one by one, week after week, until there's one player left standing. And this past year, I piloted the program, piloted the season, and got a lot of really good feedback. I'm really excited to push out our first official season. We've got a lot of players coming back. We are also accepting applications if people are interested in signing up for the league. If you go to my Twitter, Primetime Mock, you can sign up. You can go to my pinned tweet. You'll see a video of last year's footage, which is really cool. We had a lot of game footage and just cool football life sort of moments in there. But also there'll be a sign up you can click and you can sign yourself up to possibly win. First place this year is actually a $5,000 prize.
So if you're watching, if you're listening, if you got some personality and you got a whole lot of fantasy skills, put your application in. I remember watching the clips that were online on Twitter last year, and it was such a cool concept. It was, and I'm going to date myself here a little bit. It was like Real World meets Survivor meets just every fantasy league you've ever been in with a bunch of friends. And for some of the younger people that maybe don't know what Real World is, think of it as maybe a slightly classier form of Jersey Shore. But it was cool to just see the clips. It looked like everybody had a ton of fun with it. And hey, this year, get that application in. If you can survive, if you can make it through the DFS showdowns, the season-long play-in games, you can have $5,000. And listen, I don't know about anybody else, but I feel like almost everybody could use an extra $5,000. So
that's right.
Yes, please.
So get those apps in. Do something to make yourself stand out. I'm not going to tell you what it is because I don't look for any of this stuff. That's what Mark does. He looks at all that stuff. But put a little personality into it. Show your show that you could be on and you could be $5,000 richer. But now that we've introduced our great guest, let's get into the news. I always say this: it's tough in April and May when we go to the news. Some weeks we don't even have news because nothing has really happened. But now things are starting to ramp up, especially with training camps going on. Now you're really starting to get into some big time news. So I'm gonna read through it as fast as possible. Anybody can stop me if they want to. First one here. Baltimore tight end Charlie Colar I think he's actually already undergone the surgery to address a sports hernia. Coach Harbaugh there in Baltimore said similar to what Rashad Bateman went through last year. So we'll see. I know that was kind of a tight end dynasty sleeper there in rookie drafts, going in anywhere between the third and the fifth round. So we'll see. Hopefully he can get back healthy and get back soon. Rams wide receiver Van Jefferson is undergone knee surgery and questionable for week 1. So we'll see. I don't know if that means that we see more passes going to the running back. Does that mean we see the emergence of a Tutu Atwell? Do we get more tight ends into it? I don't know what it means, but Van Jefferson could kind of pull like a 60-yard reception out of nowhere when you least expect it and kind of flip the field real quick. So it'll be interesting to see how the Rams overcome it if he's not in for week 1. This one broke my heart. Denver wide receiver Tim Patrick tears his ACL, out for the 2022 season. I'm a big Tim Patrick fan. Yeah, he's never going to be wide receiver 1. It's never what you draft him for, but there's always that guy on your bench who you're like, oh, man, this could be good flex play this week. And you throw him in, and a lot of times he does exactly what you want your flex guy to do. It's never 35 points, but, a lot of times it's not 3 points either. So, it's unfortunate. We'll see what the Broncos do now. KJ Hamler came off the pup, so now he's there and he's practicing. Does this mean more for the tight end duo of Alberto and Greg Dulcich? We'll see what happens. Hopefully my boy Javonte just, gets a few more passes thrown his way. Free Javonte,
yes,
as I always say. I got to get that shirt made and just wear that every week until we free Javonte here. Next one here. Now we're going to get to some better news. Seattle wide receiver DK Metcalf has signed a 3-year, $72 million deal with $58.2 million guaranteed. And it's actually an extension. It's not a contract, so I apologize for the misspeak there. But DK Metcalf is going to get paid. Very curious to see for 2022 what they do at the quarterback position, because it seems a little odd. You're paying Tyler Lockett a good bit of money. Now you're paying DK Metcalf a good bit of money, and it would be a real shame if it was Geno Smith / Drew Lock throwing them the ball. I mean, it seems kind of like putting premium gas into a Geo Metro. I mean, you can do it; it's fine, but it's probably not the best use of resources.
I think ultimately this is like, it's the least they could do. You know what I mean? Like, they're, even if they're not going to get a quarterback, they might as well pay the man. I don't know if they're going to. I can't imagine. Like, it's so close to the season now. Like, how soon are you putting somebody into an offense and just like saying, all right, let's roll with you? Like, is Jimmy G going to get cut like week 1 and then just decide to go to the Seahawks? Like, I don't.
Yeah.
It's hard to see any of that happening. Like, I don't know. It's tough for me. Honestly, I feel like it's just like let's pay DK. I think ultimately they know they're probably looking to find a quarterback in next year's draft.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, you might as well pay your talented players that are gonna at the very least sell you tickets.
And it's funny because I hear people say that, well, Jimmy G's not going to go there because they're trying to tank. And I go, this is the weirdest tanking strategy. You keep, 74-year-old Pete Carroll as head coach. You don't trade Tyler Lockett, who's a little bit older. I get not doing anything with DK. Obviously, he's young. If you're tanking, you want young, talented players. Yeah. But, you keep Rashad Penny. It's like it's just so weird the way if it's a tank, and that's what makes me think like it's not a tank. But it also seems like they don't want to pay anything for a quarterback. So I can't break it apart in my head how this is working. But
I don't think it is a tank in some respects, and. Actually, so I'm a tortured Knicks fan, and this reminds me a lot of the Phil Jackson era a little bit, where Phil was like not willing to like sacrifice giving up draft picks anymore, because basically the Knicks were like out of draft picks. He wasn't going to settle for certain things, but also he knew he had Carmelo Anthony, and James Dolan probably made he made sure that Melo was going to be on the team, and you can't not go for it when you have Carmelo. So you build it to make it look like they're competing, and then it just all falls, falls to the wayside. Yeah. That's kind of what I think is going to happen, where they're making it look like they know I think they're just sort of almost putting like a smoke and mirrors to like the next year. A lot of these teams, you can't sell to your fan base like, hey, we're going to tank. Like a lot of teams, everybody needs that hope springs eternal kind of feeling for their team as a fan. And I think obviously they're going to put their best foot forward, and I think it's going to be Geno Smith who actually ends up being the starting quarterback for them. And they're going to do their best. They're going to do the same ground and pound run game, win 6-7 games, sort of thing that they've been trying to do with Russell Wilson. Although I don't know how well it's going to work without an actual talented quarterback. But they don't really have any other options. So you know what I mean? So there's not much.
And that's the part that like is crazy to me, because you said they go win 6-7 games and then they take themselves right out of any chance of getting one of like the top 3 quarterbacks. So it's like, okay, cool. You did just enough to not get the one piece that you think you need to become a playoff team again. So it's like, it's weird. I can't break it out in my head. We'll see how the season goes. Maybe they're smarter than us all, and Geno Smith / Drew Lock can get them 10 wins, and I'm an idiot, but I'm not seeing it right now. I'm really not. And right after that, San Francisco wide receiver Devo Samuel signs a 3-year, $71.55 million, $51.8 $58.1 million guarantee extension. Good for Devo. And,
Love it.
good for DK too, by the way.
Great
I
for
didn't say
Devo.
that, but obviously I'm all about these guys getting their money.
Absolutely.
They play a brutal sport. Their career length is, nowhere near the average Joe who has to work, 40 or 50 years. If you get 10 years in the league, that's a major accomplishment.
Huge.
And it's kind of cool because we heard at the beginning of the offseason, Devo was like, go trade me. I'm not trying to do this running back thing anymore. I just want to be a wide receiver. But there are a lot of incentives based on rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. I mean, he can make millions of dollars for getting to, I think it's 380 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. So there's actually a lot of his money at stake based on him rushing the ball. So we'll see how much that happens with now Trey Lance behind center, the 17 running backs that San Francisco always has. The names change, but the number stays the same. So good for both those guys. I'm glad they both. I'm glad they're both getting paid. This doesn't change my opinion of either one of them. But good for them. And then the last one, Drew. We must have had like 5 straight
Ridiculous.
weeks, 6 straight weeks where it was like, hey, Deshaun Watson did this. Oh, there's more accusers. Oh, wait, he just paid 10 people off. He just paid 5 people. And this is kind of what this was all building up to. What was the suspension going to be? So on Monday, Cleveland quarterback Deshaun Watson was suspended 6 games by the judge that was hearing the case. And a lot of people got excited because they were like, all right, it's a number. We know. And then everybody was like, oh, hold on. Like 5 minutes later, hold on, everyone. The NFL can appeal this. And everyone went, okay. So they had 3 days to appeal it, and that time period ends tomorrow. But multiple sources have said that the NFL is going to seek at least a 1-year suspension. I even saw one source that said that they want an indefinite suspension with a 1-year minimum. So
I think they officially are appealing at this point. Right?
They are officially appealing. I think the amount of time is what's in question right now. More, and apparently, I've seen multiple sources say that there's going to be a monetary fine involved as well, which I don't know if anyone has been suspended and had to pay a monetary fine. It's usually one or the other. So this could be a first. I'm sure somebody will reach out to me and be like, no, so-and-so had to do this, 5 years ago. But I honestly can't remember a player both getting suspended and having to pay a fine.
And also, just if I can just add real quick, this is an unprecedented case here in the NFL. And both with the volume and just a horrific sort of act sort of in question. And then on top of it, there's 100% a gaming of the system here with the Deshaun Watson Cleveland quarterback contract that he just signed. So it's not just that the what he's being accused of is in question. It's also that they're kind of expecting that he's going to be fine or he's going to be suspended for the year. And so they made it so his contract is so low that he can just sort of still make all the money that was in question.
Now, I will say, I've heard a lot of people say this, and I've actually done some research on this. If you look at the top 10 highest paid quarterbacks, at least according to Spotrac, pretty much all their deals are structured the same way. I think Josh Allen got paid the most his first year as a base salary. It was either 4.5 million or 6 point. I don't have it in front of me. Now, obviously, none of those other guys had the issues that Deshaun Watson was coming into. So obviously, besides it kind of being standard fare, I think obviously, there was a wink deal between Deshaun and Cleveland and said, hey, you can pay me $1 million this year. If I lose it, who cares? Because he's getting $45 million in a signing bonus this year, which won't be touched. Obviously, if there's a monetary fine involved, that's, completely different. But at the time, no one even thought a monetary fine was going to be something that we were talking about. So, but I mean, I said it at the time. I thought it was shocking that everyone is kind of on the Browns now, but we kind of forget that when this was all going on, the Browns weren't the only team involved, and actually the Browns had quote unquote lost out on Deshaun, and then made a pitch back to Deshaun to get him to sign. He had told the Browns that they were out. That nope, sorry. It's between Atlanta and New Orleans, I think, were the two teams that were left standing. And they flew to Houston or wherever he was living at the time, and they had the owner there, they had the GM there, they had the president, CEO there, they had the whole squad saying, Deshaun, why don't you rethink this? We can do a lot for you. We'll give you $230 million guaranteed. And Deshaun was like, well, I mean, who's going to turn that down?
Exactly.
And I think that's what kind of, reinvigorated those discussions. But yeah, there were multiple teams involved. This was not a one-horse race by any means. But the Browns, quote unquote, won, but really lost because, I mean, if he's suspended for the year, fine, he's suspended for the year, but you're gonna have the majority of fans. You have to go on the road. I mean, Cleveland going on the road to Philly. Good luck, Deshaun. They are going to be in your helmet for 48 minutes, or excuse me, for 60 minutes, and go to New York. There are just some fan bases that, and forget about even in division, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Cincinnati. Shoot, like it is not going to be good business. But they made their choice, and now they have to live with the consequence. And now of course people are saying, well, Deshaun can appeal to federal court if it's a season or an indefinite suspension, which that opens a whole nother can of worms. We've seen Ezekiel Elliott go that route. We've seen Tom Brady go that route. It never ends up well for the player, but we've seen that Deshaun Watson is gonna fight, whether he should or he shouldn't. He's gonna fight. So it'll be interesting to see if maybe this stretches on for the season and his suspension happens next season where he's owed a little bit more money and he loses those paychecks. So
yeah, I don't see that happening. Like, I think he's either going to be suspended or he's not this year. Is how I feel about it. But
yeah, it'll be interesting because if he does go to court, even if it ends up being set at a year suspension and the federal trial's over by week 6, he's got to do a full 17 NFL weeks, so that will drip over into next season. So it's almost like if they come down and say it's going to be a year, he's got to take it if he doesn't want to put paychecks for the next season at risk. And that'll be an interesting play to see what Deshaun decides. Do I just give up these? I forget what the paycheck amounts are. Like $55,000 a game or something like that. Yeah. Or does he, start risking the bigger paychecks, next year when the payments balloon in year 2? But it'll be fun to see. Not fun, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with all of this, and when we thought it was over, they pull us back in. One more thing, not ending on a good note here, but on kind of a better note, I guess. Miami Dolphins. They lose a first-round pick in 2023. They lose a second-round pick in 2024. for tampering. If you all thought that the Tom Brady, Sean Payton mega team that they were trying to build was just, the media having nothing to talk about, you were wrong, because that's what they lost the picks for. Apparently, they were talking to both of those players while they were still under contracts with their respective teams, and the NFL found out about it, and they are slapping them on the hand. And the craziest part is that even losing a first round pick, Miami still has San Francisco's pick, so they will, barring a trade or something else, they will be picking in the first round in 2023, just not with their own pick. And listen, I mean, it's weird that Miami got caught, because I feel like everyone does this. I kind of feel like, you're getting towards the end of the season. You know what your team looks like. You know what your team needs. You know who's going to be a free agent or maybe is unhappy on their current team. And, hey, what would you think about coming to play for, put insert team name here. And obviously, the timing of it, everybody says, was a little suspicious because, we talked about that for, about an hour, and we didn't talk about the whole Watson ordeal. But, owners suspended, which is kind of like putting a rich person on house arrest. Like, okay, cool. Like, they'll just watch the games from their
locked out of their
yacht
main mansion,
or their mansion or their private plane or
watch
whatever
the
they're
yacht.
doing. They're not, they're not really.
They'll be on the boat on Sundays instead of,
And he's getting fined 1.5. Owner Steven, I'm blanking on his last name now. Stephen Ross, thank you. $1.5 million. Dude's a billionaire. He probably found that in the couch cushion and just, sent that to the league office. So Miami doing some crazy stuff. But the news is over. Let's go to the timeline. This is what we do best. This is what we love to do. And the first tweet here is from Ryan Devaney at WhyDoleEvenTryFF. I'm so much more likely to trade away a player in Dynasty when I have him across multiple leagues. Thoughts? Now, this is kind of the age-old question. Do you get your guys and have a high share of your guys, your favorites, or do you diversify? Are you, as brothers on that network here, Scott Sidlow would say, diversify the portfolio, only have, 20 to 25% of a player. And if you get more, you start trading them away so you're not overextended. Mark, since you're our guest, why don't we start with you? Do you think it's a good idea to just get your guys, have the guys you like? If you have a lot of them, who cares? Or are you kind of more, hey, let's keep the percentages down so that if a guy busts out, we're not overly committed?
So I'm definitely more of a diversification guy in my redraft. I mean, I'm more of a redraft guy than I am a dynasty guy overall. But I would say I diversify a lot more in like redraft best ball than I do in dynasty. For me, I only have 3 dynasty leagues. One is a contract league. That's like my main focus dynasty league, and I'm really more about getting my guys and getting players that I really like, I believe in, and building around that. I do think it's good to diversify. I think it really depends on how big your portfolio is for each side of fantasy. I think if you need to have a redraft, you probably have to, like, however big you are about it. If you have a redraft, a best ball, a dynasty, if it's only 1 or 2 dynasty leagues, I think you're fine getting your guys. If it's 10 dynasties, yeah, you should probably diversify a little bit or even more. But for me, it's more like, it's more how much I have invested in each format.
All right, Drew. It was good hearing Mark from more of the redraft perspective, because we're the fantasy timeline. Even though we talk mostly dynasty, we do like to talk, some best ball sometimes, some redraft. And I mean, it's August, so we've turned the calendar into redraft season now. People are getting those leagues together, they're drafting. So it's good to have a little of a redraft focus in there. But Drew, You play mostly Dynasty. What do you think about this? Is this, get your guys, love your guys, who cares? Or is it, hey, let's be smart about this and let's diversify the portfolio?
Yeah, funny that you said let's be smart about this and diversify. So I guess I know where you stand. As far as redraft goes, I totally agree. I mean, we're in so many eliminators for the best ball and charity and stuff. So I definitely spread those teams out, and that's the fun every week in the eliminators, is go and see which team builds are still surviving, which ones still have a chance. But for Dynasty, I probably do a little bit of a blend. I would say overall I probably diversify. I don't want to be overweight in too many positions on too many teams. But I'll tell you this, I can't get Josh Allen on enough teams. I'm a Bills fan. I'll take him. If he, God forbid, misses 8 games this year for some reason, fine. I'll live with it on however many teams I've got him on. But all that to say, I'm not going to try to make as many positions across my leagues match as possible. I've pushed past that threshold. I think I'm at like 25 or 30 dynasty leagues at this point. So I'm past the threshold of being able to have any kind of continuity that's meaningful. Running back, I'm fine to diversify. I mean, you and I both love Javonte, so I'm probably the heaviest in Javonte right now for running back, getting him mostly in rookie drafts. For wide receiver, I mean, I've loved Justin Jefferson since the beginning, so I've got him. The funny thing is that I don't know. I guess I'm a little, as Michael Scott would say, a little stitious, right? So there's only so much of Justin Jefferson that I want to have. I'm trying to get more Jamar Chase and kind of balance it out, because I think my heart says Jefferson, but my brain says Chase as far as who I want to have kind of leading that wide receiver room. Side note: if you can't get Chase, then I love the value of where Higgins is. So that's the diversity that I really enjoy too. Is finding some of those teams where there's 2 really good options, and whether it's redraft or dynasty right now, depending on where values are for a duo like Waddle and Tyreek, get whichever one's cheaper. That's one where I would say go by the numbers more than, unless you're just an absolute Dolphins fan and you have to have one or the other. But yeah, I think in general, with the volume of the leagues that I'm in, I will try to spread things out as much as possible. But I'm also a fan at heart. So there are some guys that I just, I'm just not a huge fan of that person or how they play, maybe, or of the team in general. Like I don't have a ton of Ravens. I don't know what it is. I just don't. I'm not a Ravens fan. It's not like I'm an AFC East guy for the Bills, so it's not like I'm a Bengals or Steelers fan or something like that. But so there's things like that I'm a little shying away from. But overall, I'd say I'm probably 80 to 90% diversify. And if there's a guy or two that you really like, go get them. This is fun. Unless this is your day job and this is how you're feeding your family or something like that. And kudos if you're good enough to do that. But make sure it's fun too. So make sure when you watch the game on Thursday or Sunday or Monday night, you have somebody to root for as well. So definitely get a couple of guys you like along the way.
So before I give my answer, I want to bring this up from our man Jesse. I'd be way too sad if my guy blew up and I didn't have him, no matter how much of him I have. And that's kind of the tightrope we all walk. Because if we really believe in this,
yeah, screw the Patriots, Jesse,
and no Patriots. That's the tightrope we have to walk, because if we really believe in a guy and we go, I really believed in Javonte last year. I got him in I don't know how many leagues in rookie drafts. I was just like, Javonte no matter what, and got him probably in the majority of my leagues. Listen, it's one of those things where it's like, if he blows up, I made the right assessment. But if he stinks, I got a whole lot of Javonte that I can't do anything with. So it's that tightrope. And Drew said, "Hey, I think I know how you're going to vote on this based on saying that diversifying is smart." I'm going to go the other way, and I think this is. We always talk about rebuilds versus contenders. I think this is having fun versus money, and you can do both. You can definitely do both. But listen, if this is just pure enjoyment, you don't mind putting in your league dues every year, and you're trying your best, but you're like, listen, man, I want a bunch of Javonte. I want a bunch of Saquon Barkley. I want a bunch of, whoever your favorite player is. Devo, he just got paid. Get me more shares of him. Then get those guys in as many places as possible. Because guess what? Every week when you put Javonte, Devo, Saquon, DK Metcalf, whoever that guy is into your lineup, you're happy. You're like, listen, Devo might go, 3 for 30. And you're like, oh, terrible week. But man, when you put them in your lineup, you're like, I feel good about what I just did. I'm happy about it. Now, obviously, if this is kind of like Drew said, if this is a business, if this is, calculations and spreadsheets and all that, then yeah, don't go heavy on anybody because like Drew said, Josh Allen, if he gets hurt and he misses 6 weeks, well, if you have him on, 80% of your teams, that could torpedo you in 80% of your leagues, depending on what your roster builds look like. So, I'm more of a have fun with it. Obviously I'm trying to win every game. I'm trying to win every league that I'm in. I'm trying to win every championship, but I like my guys. I want my guys. Get me as many shares of my guys as possible. And, if once you get into enough leagues too, unless you are of the mindset, like I'm going to trade anything to get my guys. I don't care if it's a severe overpay or not. You're just going to have that natural diversity anyway. I'm in, I don't even know how many leagues, and I probably don't have more than 20% of any one player on any of my teams just because you do startups. Every startup is different, and I'm so value based that even if it's a guy I love, I'm probably not taking him 2 rounds early because the value in me is just like, that's not where the value's at. Get the value, and hopefully you can circle back to that. But, it's how it is.
I think the good thing about having a lot of leagues is you end up liking a lot of guys, right? So like you can easily still do a little bit of both where you're diversifying and still having a team you like. And for me, Dynasty, most of the fun is in the off season. It's a lot more. You're a lot more incentivized to trade if you're trading for guys you want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I Dynasty is much more of a stock market, and it's long-term plays are more valuable than obviously in a redraft league.
Right.
So it's hard not to have an opinion on a guy that you're and not willing to wait a little while for them. You know what I mean? So yeah, I would say stick to your guns if you have guys that you really like and you believe in. But you have to be good. You have to be quick to get out if you see other things. You know what I mean? It's a constant shuffle. And if you see something that changes your opinion, you've got to move on quickly. But really, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be going for the guys you want.
Yeah.
Love
and
it.
that's the beauty of the season long, right? Is you get a redo next year. So go after the ones that you want, or if you have a belief, take a risk in them this year. Have some fun with it. So.
Yeah, I mean, and we're seeing that in like Scott Fishbowl, where people took the gamble on Alvin Kamara, drop into the 4th, 5th round in a lot of situations, and people were like, well, he might get 6 games, and now it looks like, his trial's not even starting till October. So any suspension that could be coming down is probably not coming till 2023. So, those are things, I took Alvin Kamara in SFB, and not because I love Alvin Kamara more than any other player, but I was just like, okay, it's gotten. I think I took him at 412. I'm like, this value is ridiculous at this point. I think Alvin Kamara will be better than the 48th highest scoring player in fantasy. If he plays 17 or 16 or whatever it is. So, the value is there, and a lot of people are getting, rewarded for that. And as we're seeing with Deshaun Watson, a lot of people might not get rewarded if they took him early and he's suspended for a whole season. So you have that natural kind of back and forth. But go ahead.
One of my Scott Fishbowl group mates, I can't remember who actually drafted them, but went Kelsey Andrews first round, and then and then ended up taking Kamara and Deshaun Watson late. So I'm like waiting for all of us to be screwed, you know? Like if somehow Deshaun plays and Kamara plays, we're all probably just screwed.
Oh, man.
I mean, I feel pretty good about where my standing in that league, but it's when the Deshaun Watson news first came down, I was like, well, this isn't good.
Yep, took Zach Wilson over him as my QB3. Was questioning that for about 48 hours.
You're good now. You're good. All right, let's move on to the next one here. Tommy Blair at FF Tommy B. What movement is happening near the bottom of your roster as camp opens? So this is a very good question because you hear a lot of analysts talk about the churn, those last 3 to 5 spots on your dynasty bench, you know, hopes and dreams, 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounders from last year, guys that maybe you saw a deep dive article on that you took a shot on and you're looking at them and you have 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounders this year and there's more deep dive articles. So Drew, let's start with you. What are you doing with those bottom spots? How are you churning? What movement are you taking part in?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely getting back into, you know, who do I want to drop? Who do I feel good about leaving out there for a little bit? I think as a theme, I'm looking for any of those running backs that are, you know, 3rd on their depth chart right now, and just seeing kind of the first couple of days of injuries here, realizing that, you know, just a reminder that there's so much that happens, whether, you know, it's in live games, whether it's in preseason, and right now, you know, almost no contact going on. We're still seeing, you know, guys like Tim Patrick getting hurt and stuff. So I'm definitely looking at loading up running back depth and holding on for the first few weeks where I can. So if I can find, you know, a guy that's 3rd on the depth chart, maybe somebody that's, you know, undrafted that has a possibility to make a team, I'm looking at those kind of guys. So that way, you know, if something shakes out in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I've either got more depth or I've got more trade capital, right? Quarterback, I'm not too worried about. I've got what I've got there. There aren't too many rookies this year or, you know, depth guys that I'm looking to make a move for at this point. And then same thing for wide receiver. Tight end is tough, especially for the dynasty side. I mean, we took our shots in the draft in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds on a Greg Dulcich and Charlie Colar. And I can't think of the guy out of the Giants tight end.
Daniel Bellinger.
Yeah, Daniel Bellinger. Right?
Daniel Bellinger is on all my rosters right now. So yeah, I've got a couple others that I've been just using as bottom churns. Like right now, especially with Tim Patrick going down with the ACL. Obviously, there's KJ Hamler, but Montrell Washington has been having a good camp. Drafted in the 5th round this year. So he's a guy that I'm willing to pick up and just watch through preseason, right? You know, I think right now, this moment, those last few can be who can you find under waiver wire running back depth? You know, Michael Carter just got hurt in camp, so maybe you pick up Bam Knight, Zonovan Knight, as the 3rd guy on the bottom of your roster churn, all those kind of players that you can say okay, there's a path maybe to some opportunity here. And then let's watch them in preseason. Let's remember their names. Watch them through the preseason. See how they do, and see if we're willing to keep them through the roster. Or better yet, have somebody else who's a little bit hyped about them ask to trade for them, and you just clean up on a guy that you just picked up off the street.
Yep.
Yeah, you both brought up really good aspects of it. Drew, to start with yours. Look at depth charts. See where the rookies are, especially if you're talking about a team like the Giants. We talked about Daniel Bellinger. New coaching staff, which means the rookies that came in this year, that coaching staff is saying, okay, we like something out of these guys. They're talented. They have traits that we want. You know, look at guys like that, you know, and then also, as was mentioned, look at injuries. A guy that I actually put a tweet out today about for the Cowboys, Simi Fioco. James Washington goes down. It's not looking good for a return. Okay, So it's obviously CeeDee Lamb is the number one. No one's going to argue that point. Who's the number two? People go Jalen Tolbert, obviously. And I love Jalen Tolbert. I love the pick at the time. But rookies are rookies, and they are unpredictable. Simi Fioco, 5th-round pick last year out of Stanford, height, weight, speed guy, 6'4", 220 plus. Ran a 4.44 40. I'm not going to say that 3 times really fast. So a big guy can run fast. Does he have his drawbacks? Obviously, because if he was a perfect specimen, he would have went in the 1st, not the 5th. But you look at and you go, okay, who's the guy at the end of my bench? Guess what? If Simi Fioco stinks or Jalen Tolbert is amazing and he locks down the number 2 and then Michael Gallup comes back, cool. You cut him for the next guy that has some traits. But like, look for things like that. Look at depth charts. Another guy that I've been hearing, some buzz, and it's a little bit of buzz, but it's buzz. Running backs on the San Francisco 49ers, they got 1 million of them. And guess what? Almost every year they use all of them for one reason or the other. Jordan Mason, another guy, just hearing small buzzes. They like him. He's moving well. He's kind of doing what he's asked. And if he, you pick him up, if he makes the 53, great. If not, week 1, there's going to be some guy no one ever talked about that you're going to want to spend some fab on, and you need a guy to drop. Oh, all right. He didn't make a roster, that Jordan Mason that I had some hopes for. And, I did that years ago in a league with Jeff Wilson. I saw an article, looked good in camp. MFL didn't even have him in the player list. I had to reach out to them and go, hey, can you put Jeff Wilson on your player list so I can pick him up? Yeah, no problem. They put him on, and I picked him up. And, it was a 16-team league that was super deep, which is the only reason why I was even looking at him. But, Jeff Wilson has been a usable guy, So listen to the news. Another guy, Drew said you can't get quarterbacks, and this guy may not pan out to be anything, but the Cleveland Browns signed last week. They signed Josh Rosen. Well, if Deshaun is out for a year, it's Jacoby Brissett. And if Jacoby Brissett gets hurt, which quarterbacks sometimes do, it's Josh Rosen. Now, it may not be good. You may pick the guy up and never start him, and Josh Rosen averages 142 passing yards a game for the time he's in there. And then you go, all right, guy stinks, But at this point, it's lotto tickets, right? It's lotto tickets at the end of your bench. You're not going out there expecting to find the next, undrafted free agent star that no one knew about. You're just like, hey, can I find a player that maybe I use for a couple weeks in the flex, and that pays for itself.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, you're looking at, the back end of your bench. You're looking at picks like 300 to 360, right? Like we are way outside of cracking the lineup even, or likelihood of cracking the lineup for sure. Mm-hmm. So any real path that you can make, like good camp buzz, I like to see. That's a reason for me to speculate on a guy and then just watch through the preseason. Like there's not many reasons that are out of bounds in picks 300 and beyond, right? Like any narrative you can craft for a player, like based on just some good camp hype, whatever it ends up being. Ultimately, we're going to find out when the season comes through. You just want to sort of place bets on guys that have that, it's like picking really long odd futures, 100 to 1 bets. Mm-hmm. They're not really likely to hit, but if they do, it's, this is how it's going to happen. And if you believe that that's a path that can happen, then then put the bet down.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you have to anyway.
I love that analogy. I really do. All right, let's move on to our next one. And Jesse has been vocal in the chat, so I'm glad we can talk about his question here. This is from Jesse Schott at Jesse Schott. if you have a team in rebuild for a 24 championship push, a 2024 championship push, who are some guys you're looking to acquire now that may have value for that push? So we're going into the future a little bit. We're not looking at 2023 guys. We want those guys in 2024 that are going to be big money players for us. So who wants to start? Or I can start. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of names, so I'll throw a couple out there before smart guys take all of mine. For a couple years out, I'm looking at young tight ends that haven't proven anything yet, or maybe haven't had as much success as people were hoping for. So I'll still see and kick the tires on a guy like Cole Kmet or Pat Freiermuth and see, maybe the quarterback question marks in Pittsburgh will get you a little price break there. I think a lot of the folks that listen to us in the dynasty side are playing more in the tight end premium space too. And depending on what that premium is, you might be able to steal something now. Especially if you're really rebuilding for 24, are you loaded up on 23 first and stuff, or is it really just I've got to wait until then because I've got some developmental guys that I'm waiting on, or maybe it's a Devy league where I've got a few guys from next year that I've already got in my taxi squad. But tight end's probably where I'm starting to look right now. So a couple of those names come up. I'm trying to think of who else out there. As far as any other position players, running back so hard. That's the last spot to fill, right? You're hoping to hit on that next year or 24. Outside of that, I'll take a shot on, younger wide receivers that maybe are in tough spots. Maybe some people are getting impatient with Jameson Williams right now. Seeing him as listed as out on the roster. Maybe they're not demanding whatever the value was for the 106 or whatever it was that they used on him in the rookie draft. And you can wait out, sacrifice the points, and who knows what they'll have at quarterback in 2024 as well. We talked a lot about the longevity and what we really see for Jared Goff there. So those are probably the first couple that come to mind right away. But yeah, what about you guys?
Jameson Williams was like the first guy I thought of when I was thinking of this list. He was
so
like,
good.
that was the first guy I had in mind. Obviously, any of the 2021 receivers that you might like that are still kind of going a little lower than, like, I think Rashad Bateman's probably at his lowest price that he's going to be in a while. Even though, I know he's still sort of bordering on that wide receiver 3 borderline. I have him pretty solidly as a wide receiver 2 for me. I really like Jaden Waddle, although you're going to have to pay up. But again, like if it's a true 24 rebuild, again, like you still want to get guys that that are going to be there, later on down the road. I would say other than that, really guys that maybe maybe a guy like Godwin who maybe have a little bit of a depressed price right now coming off of the injury, that he'll definitely be healthy, like full on next year. I don't know if I do that right away, but like I think there's going to be a point early in the season where people are going to get frustrated with him not being like a full participant in in all the snaps that are as a receiver or something like that. That you might have a buy window for a guy like that. But other than youth, I would say guys that are really cheap right now because people maybe think they're old, like maybe even DeAndre Hopkins, like a guy who's a late season push that you can trade for yourself in going 23 and 24. I know that sounds, you know what I mean? Like guys that have depressed value right now that by the end of the season will have value and people will want to trade for again. And then, just youthful guys that you believe in.
Yeah, Mark, I think you nailed it on the head. When I saw this one, Jameson Williams, that's a great one, wide receiver 2 on the Buffalo Bills. I think that's a great one. I said what I said, Drew. You don't give me the look. Wide receiver 2 on the Bills. Or not Jameson. That's Jamison Crowder. Sorry, I'm thinking the wrong Jameson here.
It's like,
you gave me that look, and I was like, oh, he's definitely a wide receiver 2 on the Bills. But, Mark, you nailed it. Either go for young guys or, like, those wide receivers that are, like, 26, 27 this year, that in 2024 we're going to be like, they're old. They're not good.
Yeah.
we're talking about 28-year-old Amari Cooper. Like, he can't, run routes anymore. We've hated Brandon Cooks since the beginning of time. I don't know why. He's good. He's just good every year, but we don't like him. So kind of look at those guys where you're like, all right, 25, 26, 27 in 2024.
Calvin Ridley, anybody? Calvin Ridley?
Yeah.
Calvin Ridley, why not? You could probably get him first
for a
off.
third.
Exactly.
And watch guys that get hurt, and it seems, kind of not morbid, but it seems sad to say, like, hey, but like Tim Patrick, yeah, he's not one of your starting three, but he's down with an ACL. What's that going to cost you right now? In 2024, that guy could be a guy you're flexing every other week. I mean, you need guys like that on your team. You can have all the, we were mentioning before, the Jalen Waddles of the world. And yeah, you need those players because if you want to win, you need studs. But you also need, some depth and things like that. Look at 23 picks. If you're going to go the running back route, especially with the running back class that's supposed to be in 23. But look at, we talked about him earlier, Jalen Tolbert. If you like him now, then bet on him for 2024, especially at the end of this year. Let's say it's a down year for Jalen Tolbert. First year, he's a rookie, a lot to learn. He just doesn't perform. Buy low on him and go, all right, I'm waiting for this guy year 3 in 2024, not year 1 in 2022. So, Mark, I think you nailed it. Either get young guys that you like that maybe other people don't, or go with some older guys at wide receiver is a position I would say, or tight end, but wide receiver definitely, because those are going to be guys that are going to be they're going to be lower valued. We do it every year. We find whatever guy just turned 27 or 28 years old. We officially say he can't play ball anymore. And, sometimes those guys are washed. But sometimes they just play really well because they're super talented players. So
I think what happens a lot in Dynasty is this time of year, there's a lot of speculation. Like, I still think it's kind of crazy that people really want to be like out on Kelsey, like start trading him away this year, because if he's healthy this year, he makes it all the way through the season, which I don't see a reason why he wouldn't do that. Is he not, like, are you not willing to trade? Like, if you're a team that's contending, are you not willing to trade first round picks to get Kelsey at the end of this year? Probably. You know what I mean? Like, it's not. I've seen people saying like, "Oh, get out now while you can." I get the idea of like maybe not wanting to lose the player or lose the player's like draft pick value that's like tied to them, but there's also a lot of value in just having that player that when they are productive. And you, like, if you're rebuilding, you need leverage like that. You need that leverage so people will give you a little more than maybe they should, for whatever reason. If you're looking for, I would say Kelsey. If you have any, if people are trying to get out on Kelsey, I would say pick him up for a song, and then try and trade him when he's being productive and you're a contender. It's tough to find your way through a rebuild sometimes, but there's a lot of different things you can do, and ultimately, like, those kind of like things where you're getting guys for cheap and then able to like flip them. Calvin Ridley, that's another really great one.
Elijah Moore is another name that came to mind. Somebody's got competition this year. Like you said, some of those 20, 21 guys. And then thinking about tight ends, right? Darren Waller, a guy who the number is high, but the tread is fairly low for that position, knowing how long it took for him to really get into his own there. So, and
honestly, I think 27 is like, I mean, I know he's not 27 anymore, but like 27 is when a tight end's career begins, to be honest, when you think about it. Like playing into their 30s is not really a thing. or is not really like a bad thing. So I know that we get all stuck up on age, but also like we're waiting for so long for these tight ends to bloom, and then when we do, we just want to sell them. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to call back to we've talked about Bobby Koch's advice too. Like, go and play for those 24 firsts now. So maybe nobody's going to give you a 23 first for Kelce right now, and maybe you want to shed the points because your league does potential points, and you really want to make sure you get a good pick next year. Okay, well, maybe somebody's more willing to let go of that 24 first or a package that includes a 24 first and really get yourself loaded for bear. Because again, Josh has mentioned it before, you don't have to wait until 2024 to make that pick, because at the end of next year or into next year, that 24 first is also going to be really valuable when you get a guy that maybe is injured or something like that.
Drew, that is such a good point too. Like if you are rebuilding for 24, I think shooting for 24 picks is really valuable. Because ultimately, if your goal is to be a contender by then, you still want those picks that you can make more trades. Or 24 and 25 almost feel like picks that you can go for, because you want that capital to be able to make trades when you get to that moment where you are a contender, because things are going to happen, right? Things are gonna go bounce bad from time to time, and you still want some capital. So if you can get discounts on late futures too, yeah, go for that.
So I do want to bring this up because Jesse's in the chat, so he's listening to us and then responding. He traded Kelce for 223 firsts and a second.
Wow.
Listen, you're building for 24. Dude,
love that.
Like that's
that's great.
I don't even care if it's pick 11 and 12. Like it doesn't matter to me, because that 11 and 12 can turn into 7 real quick if you want to trade up in the draft. 11 and 12 can turn into a couple of players that are doing well right now and you think are going to keep doing well. Young guys, we talked about guys like Elijah Moore. We talked about guys like Jameson Williams, and those are guys that we may be like, wow. Like
that was Justin Herbert and Justin Jefferson in some drafts a couple years back.
I will say this. Because it may be the best rookie draft I ever had. I had 2 first-round picks in a league. I had pick 10 and pick 12 in a 14-team Superflex league. 110, I was going back and forth between Justin Herbert and Justin Jefferson, and I said, it's Superflex. I don't know. I think the guy between my picks will take him. I even tried trading up to 111 to ensure I got both. Couldn't get it done. I went with Justin Herbert. I tell you the truth, I can't even remember who went 111. And Justin Jefferson was sitting right there for me. I got Herbert and Jefferson in the same draft at 110 and 112. It's probably the finest piece of drafting I've ever done in my life, which is why I mention it anytime I can. But yeah, and there's so much can be done with those picks, and obviously the second is involved too. So that's doing a 24 rebuild right.
That's awesome.
Yes, I love Kelce too, and I think all of a sudden Mark Andrews blew up, and I think Mark Andrews is amazing, phenomenal. But it's almost like, all right, Mark Andrews is the one now. Everyone else except Kyle Pitts stinks, and it's like, no, Travis Kelce is still pretty good, and there's no Tyreek Hill, and there's a lot of question mark at the wide receiver position on that team. Travis Kelce could easily retake the tight end one this year and not look back. So,
and the other part about it is like, what year do we predict Kelce's going to be outside the top 10? I could see he could be in the top 10 for the next 5 years for all. I'm not that top 10 is like all that amazing, but he still could be a valuable tight end for the next 5 years, even if he's not a top 3 tight end.
I honestly think if we're using top 10 as the benchmark, I think he retires.
Yeah.
I think 2027, let's just say.
Exactly.
Travis Kelce is still, tight end 10, and then we hear, Travis Kelce retired, and we go, all right, well, he's obviously not tight end 10 anymore. But I think that's one of those things where he'll retire before we see him outside of the top 10. So let's move on to this next one here. This is a fun game that I want to play with you guys here, and it's from Peter Cardinal at _fantasy gold. He said, "All right, let's play a game. Everyone, give me your my guys, but you can't use Jalen Hurts at quarterback, AJ Dillon at running back, any wide receiver that is drafted in the first 3 rounds, and Dalton Schultz at tight end." And the good news about this is that I wouldn't have used any of those guys anyway, so that works out for me. Peter picked Joe Burrow at quarterback, Aaron Jones at running back, Darnell Mooney at wide receiver, and we spoke about him earlier, Cole Kmet at tight end. And then I love his ending here because I think it kind of slapped him in the face after he wrote it out. He says, "Shit, I have 2 Bears." That's with the team the way it's currently constructed may not be the best thing, but hey, you never know until the games are played. So I'll go first here. Friend of the show, he will be my guy until probably he retires. Kirk Cousins, the man is always there for you. He's Mr. Dependable. You can have him babysit your kids. Nothing's gonna happen. And I love Kirk Cousins even more this year because we got rid of the grumpy, defensive minded, ground and pound offense. We don't have it anymore. We have someone from the Sean McVay tree. He's gonna be out there. Kevin O'Connell, former quarterback in the league, and they do have some guy named Justin Jefferson. Heard he's good. Adam Thielen, the guy catches double-digit touchdowns all the time. Irv Smith broke his thumb. Who knows about Irv Smith now? Is happy about him. And Dalvin Cook, he hurt his hand. I hope he's all right. But they have some weapons there. If they're if Kevin O'Connell can have that beautiful mind thing going on and create an offense that can be high powered. So you got to like the fact that Kirk Cousins was always like QB 12 to 15 in a ground and pound offense, and you figure he's going to air it out a little bit more. So I took Kirk Cousins. Zeke Elliott at running back. I'm going to keep saying it. The guy just ends up as a top 12 running back every year. And people go, but he's not efficient. But he's not this. I said, all I know is he doesn't get hurt. And guess what? You can get him as your RB2, sometimes your RB3. This isn't a guy you have to take in the first round. Look at the ADP. He's like running back 18 off the board. Like, you want to go 0 RB, you might get Zeke Elliott as your RB1, but he's not a guy that you need out there to get you 20 points every week. Or if he is, you went 0 RB or you just did something terribly, terribly wrong. But Zeke Elliott, guess what he's going to do? He's going to be top 12 this year as a running back, barring injury. And he doesn't really get injured. So the next one, Devonta Smith. So, Peter, I have 2 NFC East guys, if that makes you feel any better. But Devonta Smith, we've just decided that A.J. Brown is going to just take every target from Jalen Hurts, and no one else is going to get anything. And listen, we don't know. A.J. Brown coming into a new offense, Jalen Hurts and Devonta Smith obviously have some chemistry because you don't get to over 1,000 yards receiving by not having chemistry with your quarterback. So I think he's a guy that we're kind of dismissing because the big splash move was made. But I like him, and I think I like him more than a lot of other people, and I'm quite fine with that. I think he's going to have a very good year. I think he'll end up in that wide receiver 2 range, and for somebody outside of the first 3 rounds, yeah, I'll take that. And then last but not least, we go. This is actually my all NFC team. I just realized to the NFC West, we got Zach Ertz. At this point, Zach Ertz might be the number one receiver on that team until Hopkins gets back. Hopkins down 6 weeks for PED suspension. Apparently, Hollywood Brown is just going to drive 100 miles an hour everywhere. So we'll see what happens with that. I don't expect them to miss games, but you never know what kind of stuff will get you in a coach's doghouse. And, what we know about NFL coaches, they are petty. So if you're in the doghouse, it takes a lot to get out. So if Hollywood ends up there, we might be talking about San Bernardino Brown again. And, we're trying to figure out what's going on. So that's my foursome. Drew, why don't you go next? Who's your four my guys?
Are we doing this for this year, like redraft, or does it matter?
You do whatever you want, all Drew. Right. This is your show. You do whatever you want.
Let's see here. I feel like this is Peter's got an interesting blend there with Aaron Jones mixed in. Everybody else seems a little bit younger, but as far as we'll treat this like a redraft since we've got Mark with us here. So if I were to be able to go back and do Scott Fishbowl again, quarterback, I would be looking at. I like Kirk Cousins. I think Matthew Stafford is the way that I'm going to go here for this year. Love what they're building there, and I like Stafford. I love that he got out of Detroit and got a chance to go to LA in sunshine and have get a Super Bowl shot. For running back, it is wild to see how late you can wait on running back this year. So for me, it's Josh Jacobs right now. I don't care about what the future holds for him. You look at the offense around. They added Devontae Adams, of course. There's going to be less instances where he's just going to be stuffed at the line with a bunch of defenders there because they're going to have to respect Adams and Renfro and Waller still. Carr is a capable enough quarterback to make you be honest, especially on some of the short and intermediate stuff. So give me Jacobs as my if he's my 0 RB1 because I'm taking him in the 6th, 7th, wherever he falls to, I'll take it. Wide receiver outside the top 3 rounds. This might be cheating a little bit depending on what ADP is. I don't know what redraft looks like yet. I mentioned him earlier. Give me T. Higgins if he's there, in the 40s in the picks. I think there are some drafts where he's definitely going into the 4th and maybe even early 5th sometimes if people are just sleeping because they've got all the chase hype. And then for tight end, I do love Zach Ertz. I'll go with another Eagle, though. I do like Dallas Goedert still. I'm curious to see how the Eagles play. I know some people he's a little bit polarizing, but he's athletic. He's shown flashes where he can make you pay and take it to the house. He's not just a red zone target. So I'll throw a Goddard in there as well.
All right. I just wish they would give old Matt Stafford more weapons. The guy just doesn't really have much around him. I feel bad for him. No, I love I love it top to bottom. I'm not as in on Dallas Goedert as a lot of other people, but if Jalen Hurts can put it together, he's got weapons too. So Dallas Goedert could definitely be a part of that.
I do think Stafford will make something good at A-Rob this year. So, folks, if you want another guy that's way outside the top 3 rounds, you could do worse than A-Rob.
I hope you didn't just take Mark Sky there with your last minute outburst. But no. We'll shoot it over to Mark. Mark, who are your my guys?
Hey, I'm gonna give you 2 for each, and I'm gonna give you a high and a low. I really like Lamar Jackson for me as my high end QB1. He is QB2 for me right now behind Josh Allen, and he's usually going as like QB5. Mm-hmm. So you could take him there. Moving back to Trey Lance, I think ultimately right now he with his rushing ability, his ADP is going a little too low. I understand that people are worried about him, as a quarterback, but ultimately the rushing is going to be enough that it's going to sustain, and that offense is high powered. And I think he's going to be just fine there. Could ultimately still has upside to be in the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks at the end of the year. So those two there. Running back, I didn't go too far down for either, but two guys I really like are Aaron Jones. Again, I think he's probably going to lead that team in the reception column at the end of the day, probably. And the other would be Saquon Barkley. I think he's fully back now. It's looking like he is explosive if you're seeing him in camp. Ultimately, everybody who's been around him is saying it's completely different than it was last year. And if you listen to guys like Dr. Edwin Porras, who's actually going to be on our show tomorrow night on Primetime Mock, says that really that after the ACL, that injury proneness is not really. First of all, injury proneness is not really a thing that he prescribes to, but a freak athlete like Saquon Barkley is probably not prone to that re-aggravation or anything like that we're going to see this year. I think he's healthy, he's ready to go, and he's just a freak athlete, so I'm feeling good about that. Wide receivers, Cortland Sutton, he's a guy that I have in my top 12. I don't draft him that way, but I think he's going in the 5th round right now. Way too low for me. I love the connection that he's already sort of building with Russell Wilson. I think he's got the upper hand on being the wide receiver one there in Denver for him. Moving back to Kadarius Toney, going like in the 9th round, I think right now. You could draft him as a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 3, but he does have upside to push himself into a wide receiver 2 based on how he sort of looked on the field last year. You hope that he could be a little more consistent. And then finally, I really liked Ertz and Goddard. You both made it hard on me, so I'm going to go even further down my list, and I'm going to say Robert Tonyan. I think that ultimately there's continuity with Aaron Rodgers, which there's not a lot of that in his receiver core anymore with Devonta Adams gone. And he was a big-time touchdown scorer and first down securer for Rodgers in the past. He's gonna be relying on guys he can count on. You know that he at the very least can count on Tonyan. He has the trust there, and he's going so late right now. I don't know what it is, but it's double-digit rounds. And if you're really punting at tight end, I think he's a perfect candidate.
Yeah, I love all that. It'll be interesting to see what happens in Green Bay. I mean, there was some hype today about Romeo Doubs. I believe they took him in the 6th round. It looks like him and Aaron Rodgers maybe have a little bit going on, but like, who is going to be the wide receiver 1 on that team? Like, is it Christian Watson? I really haven't heard anything about that. Does Romeo Doubs come out of nowhere? Is it Allen Lazard? Like, there's so many question marks. So why not take that gamble? I'm not a Tonyan guy, but like Mark said, if you're punting it, if you're like, hey, I'm not taking a tight end till the 13th round, the 14th round, get yourself some Bob Tonyan. Worst case scenario, I'm right. He's not any good, and you just do what you were going to do anyway, which is just hit waiver wire, see what happens, see what guy comes out of nowhere. Or Mark is right, and Aaron Rodgers goes, I don't even recognize any of these guys besides Allen Lazard and Aaron Jones. And in the red zone, it turns into the big shot Bob Tonyan show, and he does what he did. What was that? 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where he just had a plethora of touchdowns, and you're just laughing your way to the bank when you're cashing that check for all those league fees you just won. So.
And if there's anything true that we know about Aaron Rodgers, is that it takes him a minute to build chemistry. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the Green Bay doesn't help him out that much with the wide receiver capital they put in. Although they did draft Christian Watson in the 2nd round this year.
Yep.
But it does, he's a guy who really puts trust and sort of invests his time in his players. And ultimately, Bob Tonyan was in the top 6 tight ends 2 years ago before he tore his ACL. I don't see why, especially when when you're looking for guys that Aaron Rodgers can count on, like he just seems like a guy to me that's like right there and an obvious like tough. At a tight end position, obviously, if I'm not at the top end, I'm not asking. I'm not saying he's going to be a top 3 tight end.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're punting, honestly, there's a lot worse you could do than Robert Tonyan, and ultimately he's shown I think he had 8 touchdowns 2 years ago, and he. Again, if you're looking for trust from Aaron Rodgers, that's a guy that I know that he trusts.
And redraft when it comes to tight end, I ascribe to the old Ricky Bobby. If you ain't first, you're last. If I'm not taking the first guy off the board, the rest of it's for the birds. I'll wait until double-digit rounds. I'll see what's going on, and I'll take a Bob Tonyan. I'll see who else is hanging out. Brevin Jordan. A guy that probably is not, going to get, a lot of love in redraft. Guys like that where it's like, all right, listen, if I'm right, awesome. I just, I hit this lotto ticket. And if I'm wrong, well, I took a guy in the 13th round. I planned on churning the position anyway, so I'm not really any worse for wear than when I started. But we got one more left. Drew kind of ruined it because he mentioned one of the guys in the poll. But this is from Big Bank Sports at BigBank_sports. Which running back would you draft? If you wouldn't draft one, who do you think finishes with the most fantasy points? So you're on the board. These are the 3 top guys in the queue. Who are you taking? Antonio Gibson, Josh Jacobs, or Elijah Mitchell? All right. Drew, why don't you start us off on this one? Where are you going? Who is your guy? We may know already, but maybe we don't. Who do you got?
Yeah, I'm pretty easily with Josh Jacobs out of this group. I think he's got the most consistency, and I think he's got the most opportunity at that position. We'll see what happens in Washington. I know I like Brian Robinson there. I think there will be some action for him fairly early on. We'll see how they manage Gibson's workload this year. And then Elijah Mitchell, you said there's 15 different running backs there. And now we have Devo that's staying on with incentives to rush the ball, and Trey Lance, who is a freak athlete. So, Josh Jacobs pretty easily out of that group for me. And most likely, I probably get him the latest out of that group too.
That's a good one. So we can vote here for Josh Jacobs. Mark, who do you like out of the trio of Antonio Gibson, Josh Jacobs, and Elijah Mitchell?
So I think especially with Gibson is dealing with a hamstring injury right now in camp. And just I feel like the news on him just for the past couple months has moved him down and down my boards to the point where I'm pretty much out unless I'm going 0 RB. He's like my first guy, like Drew said. But again, if Jacobs or Mitchell are there, I'm taking them. I know Josh Jacobs doesn't have like the best rapport with the fantasy community, and he doesn't care about your fantasy team. But who cares about that? Ultimately, I think that offense is going to just be a little better this year. And he's still going to be the main. He's going to be the main guy carrying the load. If there's a pass catching back, if Kenyon Drake still continues to have that pass catching role, that might eat into it a little bit. But again, at this point, all 3 of these guys are kind of committee guys, or at least you have to surrender that's a possibility with all of them. For me, I would say Mitchell would be my favorite, but it's probably a pretty close dead heat between Jacobs and Mitchell.
So is your vote for Mitchell then?
Let's say to contrast you, I'll go with Mitchell. Ultimately, neither of them really catch passes. They're both going to be on offenses that I think are going to be good, involved in and they're both going to be involved in their offense. So it's kind of, again, like these are, like Drew said earlier, they're like perfect 0 RB like starting running backs for me. But yeah, I would say they're real. I mean, though I think about players like these guys are really very close for me.
So this is a very tough question for me because there's two guys on this list that I love, and there's one guy on this list that I've just been very meh about. Antonio Gibson and Elijah Mitchell. I've talked those guys up since day one. I've loved what they've done last year when people were using first round rookie picks on Trey Sermon. I tried to stop people. I really did. Drew knows. I was out in these streets. I was trying to warn people against it. I said, if you like Trey Sermon, just take Elijah Mitchell like 3 rounds later in your rookie draft. Just do that. And some people came on board, and other people told me that I'm not that smart. And I mean, I'm not, so I get it. But Elijah Mitchell, he came out there, he did his thing. Trey Sermon was in the doghouse, and then he just wasn't good. So two guys that, like, you know, I could really just like make Big Bank Sports here, drive up a wall and just go Antonio Gibson, and then we'll split it up 3 ways, and then, you know, take whatever advice you want. But I'm not gonna go with the two guys I love. I'm gonna go with the guy I've been meh on, Josh Jacobs. I think he has the best offense around him. Derek Carr, I think, is a good quarterback. He's not elite, but he's good. Obviously, they bring in Devontae Adams. That's so clutch. They still have Hunter Renfrow. They still have Darren Waller. I know a lot of people are going to yell, you know, what about Zamir White? What about Zamir White? I mean, honestly, a 4th round pick, you know, do you think he's going to do enough to take a bunch of touches away from a guy that they're going to run into the ground? They didn't pick up that 5th-year option, so they're not going to have any hesitation to give Josh Jacobs as many carries as humanly possible, throw him as many balls as they possibly can within the offense. And, you know, they have Josh McDaniels, you know, I just have a weird feeling he will know how to draw up an offense to maximize Josh Jacobs, even though obviously they're not re-signing the guy. And I think they're doing this the right way at the running back position. Get your 4 years out of the guy, you know, year 4, run him into the ground. Let someone else pay him big money. And, you know, they'll have Zamir White next year. If they want, they can use another pick to get another guy in or bring in a free agent and keep churning. Just keep churning that position, because that's kind of what the NFL has turned into. So we got 2 votes for Jacobs here, 1 vote for Mitchell. But Mitchell won this poll at 37.1%. Josh Jacobs in second at 34.9%, and Antonio Gibson rounding it out at third, 27.9%. And, you know, I think the fantasy community has always loved Antonio Gibson more than the Washington Commanders have loved Antonio Gibson. They never seem to want to make him the guy by himself. J.D. McKissick, they draft Brian Robinson. You know, it's a thing. They have something.
He's been plagued with injuries too, like throughout his foot injuries, and he's always been like when he was on. You know, there was that, I remember that Cowboys, I think it was a Thanksgiving game where he had like 3 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that?
I do remember that.
And then the next week, I think he like broke his foot.
Yeah.
And like he had such a hard running style, but I think like it's hard to like sustain. And I think the Ron Rivera he could be Christian McCaffrey quote that he gave his rookie year really threw fantasy people into a tizzy and made it like, oh my god, this guy, this guy is going to be amazing. And now it's sort of like, well, he is a good rusher. I think he still can, again, he can produce if he can stay healthy, but I think ultimately now they're looking like, okay, well, it's going to have to be a committee. And yeah, it's hard for me. It's hard for me to want to be part of a committee and an offense that I don't believe in the first place.
Oh, 100%. Cool question here by Steve, and Drew already answered this. But if they don't bring Josh Jacobs back for 23, where do you want him to get his second contract? That is a very interesting question. Drew said Buffalo. Drew's always going to say Buffalo. But that's not what the Bills do at the running back position. They just take second and third round picks every year forever. But it would be fun to see him in that offense. Mark, is there an offense that you see him in that you think could be pretty cool?
So three kind of come to mind for me. One would be the Patriots. I think that's a pretty seamless fit for them. I mean, Josh Jacobs is a pass blocker. He's Bill Belichick loves him a pass blocking running back, and on top of it, he's a good rusher. I could easily see him with the Patriots. I could see him with the Dolphins. I could see him going to the Miami Dolphins. I imagine they would draft a running back next year, but it doesn't mean that they wouldn't bring in like a solid veteran that they could just have a 2-person committee,
right?
As opposed to, they've got 3 guys now that they're sort of, or 4 or more right now that for all we know. And then the last one I could see is the Rams. I think, I don't know if that's the most likely outcome, but I don't think Cam Akers is really long for that job, and I don't. I think ultimately they'll be looking elsewhere next year. So, a guy like Jacobs, I think, could be really valuable to a team like the Rams, and probably do it on a contract that's like team friendly.
Yeah.
So, I got a team here, and it's a team that Josh Jacobs actually knows really well. We keep him in the AFC West, and he goes to Kansas City.
Ooh.
CH, meh. Then now we're throwing Rojo in the mix, and Jerick McKinnon, and Derek Gore, and a bunch of other Jags. And wait, we lost Tyreek. That's a blow to the offense. We got Sky Moore and the Pips. Why don't we get Josh Jacobs in there, man? Why don't we really put a legitimate running back in that system, and let's get it turbocharged, running on all cylinders. It would make sense for the Chiefs because, like you guys said, he's probably not, no one's probably paying him $15 million a year to come and run. Maybe the Jags would, because the Jags like to spend money, but I think the other 30 teams involved would not spend that much. So I think you can get them on a good deal, and you could probably, sell them on the fact that, hey, you got a good chance to win a ring here, and you get to play Vegas twice a year. So you get to shove it down their throat as a part of the Chiefs, and show them why they messed up and didn't keep you around for the 5th-year option and possibly longer. So that was the first one that came to mind. Like, oh, why doesn't he take the trip to Kansas City and enjoy it with Pat Mahomes, who, maybe not the most accurate of quarterbacks according to Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelce and Sky Moore and those guys. So Yeah, but that was a good one, Steve. We gave you some options. You know, you can discount Drew's because Drew's going to say
Miami did come to mind. They were probably my first realistic, if they want to consolidate that, because they're just going the way of the 49ers there. But I was afraid you were going to say the Jets and you're going to send them to every other team in the AFC East except the Bills.
Yeah, the Dolphins are an interesting one, but man, they just seem to be kind of putting together a very San Francisco East Coast team there, where it's like, all right, like let's just get a quarterback that's not going to kill us. Let's put some weapons around him, and let's have 47 running backs, and let's see how this pans out. So, Josh Jacobs would do a lot of good on that team, but I'm curious.
They could have Alabama East, right? If Tua's still there, Waddle back.
Yeah,
Josh Jacobs.
True.
All they need to do is get Nick Saban to give it another run with the Dolphins.
The problem is that probably no matter where you go, there's probably an Alabama East and an Alabama North, and so many dudes come out.
I mean,
Alabama.
Philly's damn near Alabama East.
Yeah, that's true too. They'll
replace Miles Sanders next year.
They could. Yeah, you're right. They have Hurts there. They have a couple guys on defense from Alabama too.
Devonta Smith,
yeah, Devonta Smith. So, very interesting. But all right, we're at the end of the show here. So, I want to thank you, Mark, for coming on. Really appreciate it. Great time, a lot of fun. Just one more time on the way out. Just remind people who you are, where they can find you, and what you're up to.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Primetime Mock. I do Primetime Mock, an industry draft show every Thursday night. If you're ever looking to come out draft, we're always looking for people from the fantasy community to jump on. And then fantasy football. I'm accepting applications to sign up for the reality competition I put together. Again, go to my Twitter. There's a pinned tweet with the video and then the sign up. So Josh, Drew, thank you so much for having me on. I had a great time.
Man, the pleasure is all ours. And like Mark said, listen, you got a little bit of personality, put it in an application, send it to Mark. Look at the clips from last year. If you're like, hey, maybe I don't understand the concept, or I want to see like kind of what was going on last year. Dude, watch the clips. The clips are good, man. And I'm telling you, it definitely has a reality show, Big Brother, whatever your favorite reality show type vibe to it. But it's all about fantasy. You're doing DFS. You're doing season long. It's not just, hey, who's the best season long team? Who's the best dynasty player? You got to kind of be well rounded in everything if you want to come out on top.
And you can always just DM me and ask me questions. I'm happy to do that. I will be at the Fantasy Expo next weekend. If you want to come find me, I'm happy to talk about it with you then. I'll be, it's a great time. I mean, I had some friends who sort of joined with me, and honestly, whether you're a content creator or not, you just really have to love football. And really all I'm asking for you as far as like videos is like, give me your lineup and give me a promo, and then tell me how it went. And it's not all as hard as you think. And once you really get into it and you're involved in the league, you realize how invested you become. It makes the videos really easy.
Yeah, and it's funny because I hear a lot of people, they say, why I can't get in front of a camera, I can't do this and that. And whenever someone comes to me and says that, I go, do you have a home league? Your family, your friends, whatever your home league is. Yeah, you talk a little bit of trash in that league. Maybe you're playing your brother that week. You give him a look. That's all you got to do. Just get in front of a camera. Like you said, state your lineup. Tell everybody why you're going to win. The other guy or gal is going to lose. And once you think about it like that, not so much as you have to come up with a script or a thing like that. You just turn the camera on, go, get in front of the grill. I'm gonna smoke you like I'm smoking these ribs right now. Whatever.
That's right. That's right.
It'll come.
Show me.
Yeah.
Show me your fantasy life. Show me your football life. What do you do on Sunday morning? Like, show me your prep. Your prep for the game day. Everybody's got a ritual. Take me through that. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for everybody's kind of fantasy life and going through that, and the competition just becomes, you become so involved that again, participating in the video part becomes the easy part because you're so involved in this league.
Yeah, and I feel like last year you could see it where possibly there were some rivalries being built with people that maybe didn't necessarily know each other at the beginning of the season, but you're in first, or you're going, you're trying to get that immunity, and you're like, this guy has been, first in DFS 3 weeks in a row. I'm taking him out this week. I'm getting him. It becomes easy. So really, take a look. Like Mark said, he will answer questions if you have them. But it seemed from everything that happened last year, it was a lot of fun. And what else was a lot of fun was seeing everybody in the chat asking questions. Oh my God. I say this every week, and I'm going to keep saying it every week. I love it when we get questions in the chat. You know why? Because we don't have any time to prepare. We have a show sheet. We know what tweets we're talking about. We can prepare as much or as little as we want. But when you send that question in the chat, it's right off the top of the head. Where's Josh Jacobs going? Obviously Drew doesn't need any time to prepare for that. Everyone goes to Buffalo in his world. But, it's on the spot. We don't have time to look at depth charts. We don't have time to see who's going to be a free agent. And no, man, it's off the top of the head. It's like, all right, what do we think right now? And that's so much fun. So shout out to the chat. Remember, if you are in the chat, you were watching this on YouTube, remember, hit subscribe, hit the bell, give us a like, leave a comment if you want. All that stuff is cool. It's great to interact. And listen, sometimes 9 o'clock on a Wednesday, you can't make it. That's cool. You're listening to us in the podcast form. An hour and 41 minutes. That's a long time. And you stuck with us to the end. So we appreciate you too. Remember, maybe you were referred by a friend. Maybe you just hit it in a search engine and you got us. Cool. We hope you like it. Hit subscribe. If you can rate and review on whatever podcast platform you use, please do that, because those also help us out. Like I always say, tell us the good, but if there's something we can improve on, let us know about that too. We're always trying to improve. We're trying to be the best wheeze that wheeze can be. So on that note, Drew, one more thing. We got some football tomorrow. Football tomorrow. I'm excited. I don't care that it's going to be guys that are selling insurance in 3 weeks. It's still football, and I'm excited about that. And on that note, Drew, we can get out of here.
Late.